Have you ever noticed that sometimes God can teach you something in the most unexpected places? Because I recently spent some time driving around the big city, and apparently I didn't just go to visit family and get from point A to point B. I actually went to driving school. And apparently, again, God was my instructor because somewhere between figuring out a rental car that I'd never driven before, missing exits, getting rerouted by the GPS, sitting in construction, trying to stay in my lane, and realizing that sometimes the GPS has absolutely no idea what it's talking about, I started seeing something. Navigating a big city is a lot like navigating life. You don't always know what's coming. Sometimes you miss the turn. Sometimes you realize you're in the wrong lane. Sometimes the road you wanted is completely blocked. Sometimes you have to take a detour. And sometimes you need somebody sitting beside you saying, your exit is coming up. And sometimes you just have to keep driving because it's just too late to turn. But here's what really got me. What if walking with God isn't about knowing the entire route? What if it's about learning how to trust Him with the next turn? Hi, friends. Welcome to Taking Back Happy. I'm your host, Gina Granville. God's girl, retired homeschool mom of 4, empty nester, GG, essential oil and exercise enthusiast, Christian life coach, and someone who is taking back her own happy. I know many of you feel exactly like me in these midlife years, a sort of loss of direction, but you feel way too young and vibrant to sit on the porch and just watch life go by. What if you could reclaim your life, finding deep joy, renewed passion and purpose, and plenty of adventure in these midlife years? If you are ready to find your spark again, throw on those walking shoes, pop in those earbuds, and join me right here as we take back happy together. Hey, Taking Back Happy friends, I really want to connect with you. Hop on over to the Facebook group. We have a Taking Back Happy Facebook group where women are taking back their own happy and they're connecting with one another while they do it. Another way you can connect with me is to become a TBH Insider. When you become a TBH Insider, you get weekly emails with the latest podcast, tips on creating a happy mindset, early bird access to special offers, and encouraging Bible devos. And last but not least, you can sign up for a free 45-minute Taking Back Happy discovery call. Are you feeling stuck in your relationships? Are you showing up as the person you truly want to be? As a Christian life coach, I'm here to walk alongside of you to encourage you, guide you, equip you, while also helping you challenge old mindsets. So if that's something you might be interested in, contact me today and we'll get that set up. So what in the world does driving around my hometown of Indianapolis have to do with taking back happy in midlife? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's because there's so many times, so many of us, especially in midlife, we want the whole map. We want to know where we're going, how we're going to get there, how long it's going to take, and preferably whether there's going to be construction along the way. But God doesn't usually hand us the entire itinerary. He gives us each next step. And when we miss a turn, He can reroute us. When the road is blocked, He can show us another way. When we're distracted, He can get our attention. And when we're tempted to follow everybody else's directions, He reminds us to listen to His voice. And when we don't know what to do next, He simply says, keep going, I'm still with you. So today, I want to share 10 things I learned from driving around the big city and what it taught me about navigating life with God. And I have a hunch that somewhere in these 10 lessons, you might recognize the road you're on right now. So Laura and I went to Indianapolis this past weekend, just a quick weekend getaway to connect with family, to go to a wedding, that sort of thing. We had a rental car. We were driving here and there and everywhere, and we had a lot of bumps and bruises along the way. So here are 10 things I learned from driving around my hometown of Indianapolis. Number 1, figure out the gadgets before you hit the road. So the lesson here is preparation matters. When you get a rental car, there's approximately 47 buttons, screens, and mysterious gadgets you have to figure out. And trying to learn them while you're already driving through traffic, that's a no-go. So that's literally putting the cart before the horse. Sometimes we jump into a new season of life and we expect ourselves to figure everything out as we go. But preparation isn't a lack of faith. Sometimes the wisest thing we can do before we start something new is to stop, learn, prepare, and get our bearings. We can ask God, what do I need to know before I take off? Number 2, if you miss a turn, don't panic. And the lesson here is God can reroute you. You miss the exit, immediately the GPS comes on and says rerouting. It doesn't say, well, you've completely ruined this trip. It simply just recalculates. And isn't that comforting? Sometimes we think when we've missed God's direction, maybe we've made a wrong choice, a wrong decision. Maybe we took a wrong turn in a relationship or career, or marriage, parenting, or some other area of our life. But God isn't standing back there saying, well, you blew it. Good luck. You can go back to the last thing you know God told you and start right there. God can rewrite you from where you are right now. You don't have to get back to where you were to get to where God is taking you today. Number 3, there is more than one way to get there. The lesson here is your way isn't the only way. Ooh, I know that can be harsh, right? Sometimes you're in the wrong lane and there's absolutely no way you're getting over. So you missed the exit. But guess what? There's always another exit. There's more than one way to get where you're going. And sometimes that alternative route gives you something you never would have seen otherwise. Like when Laura and I were traveling, we were on the interstate and it had, 5 lanes or whatever. And it said, stay in the second lane to get on this road that we were going on. So I was like, okay, we got in that second lane. Well, at the last minute, 2 more lanes popped up on the right and we were suddenly not in the right lane. There was nothing I could do about it at that point. It was like heavy traffic. It was, right after work. And so we ended up going off on that next exit. And what was kind of cool was it took us through town and we got to actually go by the baseball field, by the victory field. So it was just something cool to see. Sometimes a route you didn't plan becomes part of your adventure. So we can get so focused on our plan that we miss what God might be doing on the detour. Here's something I want you to think about. An unexpected route doesn't necessarily mean you're going the wrong way. Number 4, 2 are better than 1. And, our lesson here is life is better with people. It's better with friends. It's better with family. Driving around in a big city by yourself is one thing, but driving around with someone who can say, hey, your exit is coming up soon, or this is another way to go is a completely other thing. There's something powerful about having another person to help you navigate. Ecclesiastes 4, 9, and 10 says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. On this trip, I was so thankful for Laura because I definitely could not have been driving around doing all that. I did find out, however, if I do drive by myself, I have to have the person speaking because me just looking at the directions, I kept messing that up every single time. So here's our key thought. You don't have to know every direction if you have good people beside you. Number 5, stay in your lane. So the lesson here is you get to decide where you're going. And I will say that this rental car we had was very bossy. Anytime I got too close to the edge of the line or didn't like something I was doing as I was driving, it suddenly began telling me, stay in your lane. It didn't actually say stay in your lane. It says, do you need a coffee break? I'm like, really? Excuse me? But there's actually a really great life lesson here. There's always going to be people who have an opinion about what you should do, where you should go, what your life should look like, what you should do next. But guess what? They aren't driving your car. So my favorite thing to say, you get to decide. As women in midlife, we sometimes have to learn how to distinguish between God's direction and everybody else's opinions. So here's our key thought. Stay in your lane and let God determine the destination. Number 6, don't follow the GPS blindly. Here's our lesson. Think for yourself. GPS is incredibly helpful, but GPS isn't God. Sometimes it will confidently tell you to turn somewhere and you're thinking, are you absolutely sure about that? And that's a good question to ask in life too. Just because someone or something is giving you directions doesn't mean you have to blindly follow them. We need discernment. We need to ask questions. We need to think. We need to pray. We need to make sure the direction we're following actually aligns with God's truth. So this is one of the big things that happened to us as we were up there. We wanted to go by the cemetery and see where my brother and my father are buried, and we just wanted to go there and spend some time with them. And so we decided we were going to stop and get some flowers and have them put up on, they have this little holder up there in a wall. They're one in Lowe's mausoleum on the wall. And so we were going to get the flowers. They were going to put the flowers in for us. We got a little, we were going to go pick them out. And so Laura looks it up and she was like, you know what? There is a Hobby Lobby right across the street from the cemetery. And I was like, huh, that's weird. I don't really remember that. But I was like, okay, maybe it's on the other side of the cemetery or whatever. So we get in the GPS and we start driving, and, it's like probably 20 minutes or so to get there. And so we're just following the GPS, and it's taking us down this road and down this interstate and around this thing. And so we pull in the parking lot, and she's like, oh, there's the Hobby Lobby. And she said, and the cemetery is right across the street from it. I was like, no, it's not. And she's like, what? I was like, that's not the cemetery. And she's like, are you kidding me? She's like, but I told you I looked it up and it was right here. And she said, I looked up Flanner Buchanan. I said, oh, there's several Flanner Buchanans in Indianapolis. And she's like, what? Are you kidding me? She goes, I don't know my way around this city. Why didn't you double check my work? And at this point, we were just like laughing because it was ridiculous. So we look it up to find out where we need to go next. This is before we even went in to get the flowers. It is a 30-minute drive in the other direction. So anyway, big, huge boondoggle. I didn't trust my gut there. I didn't go back and like, wait a minute, that doesn't quite make sense that there would be a Hobby Lobby there. I just kind of went with the flow, trusting the GPS, having no idea, following it along. So joke was on me when we end up at Washington Park Cemetery instead of Washington Park North Cemetery. So our key thought here is guidance is helpful, but discernment is absolutely essential. Which brings me into the next point, and this kind of piggybacks on what we were just talking about. Number 7, trust your gut. The lesson is God gave you an inner sense of discernment. This one came up while Laura and I were traveling, and she reminded me to trust my gut about which way to turn, whether we should take an exit. And it made me think about how often as women we're taught to ignore that little voice inside. But God created you with instincts, with intuition, and with discernment. And that doesn't mean that every feeling is automatically God's voice, but it does mean you don't have to dismiss what you're sensing. So when I was saying to myself, like, that's weird, I don't remember a Hobby Lobby near there, that would have been the time to look it up and make sure we were on the same page. But no. In life, we can pause, pray, pay attention. We can ask, God, what are you trying to show me here? Because our key thought is sometimes trusting yourself isn't rebelling against God. It can actually be part of trusting the way that He created you. Okay, number 8. Sometimes it's too late to turn. So the lesson here is safety is more important than speed. You're flying down the interstate and suddenly there's your exit. I can't tell you how many times that happened to us. At that point, you have about 3 seconds to make a decision. You could jerk the wheel and cross like 3 lanes, or you could say, okay, we'll just catch the next one. So that's what we ended up doing most of the time. Sometimes the safest decision is to keep going. And that's a lesson we all need in life. We don't have to force something just because we think we're running out of time. We don't have to make a dangerous decision because we're afraid we're going to miss an opportunity. Safety is better than speed. And sometimes God's not yet is actually our protection. Okay, number 9. Sometimes there's no way around the construction. Here's our lesson. Some things simply can't be avoided. We were trying to get somewhere to see my dad's bridge. It was a bridge that he created. He was a civil engineer before he was in the computers. And so he created this really cool little walkover bridge. It's like it's over this road and you walk over it. And so we were going to go on this bridge and take some pictures and just do some fun stuff. We had about 15, 20 minutes before we had to be getting down the road to meet our family for lunch. And so we're like, okay, we're just going to run by there real quick. Well, when we turned onto the road, which was Madison Avenue, the road was completely blocked. There was construction everywhere. There was no shortcut. There was no clever little maneuver. We were not getting through. And isn't that just like life, right? So at that point, we turned right and she saw a sign that said Madison again. And I was like, oh, well, cool. Okay, so this is going to be, maybe the road just jogged over because of the construction, right? Wrong. We turned onto it and immediately we had two choices, getting on one interstate or getting on the other interstate. So we ended up on this long goose chase where we had to go all the way down to another exit and there was more construction. And we spent about 20 minutes driving out of town and then turning around and driving back into town. And of course, we never got to see the bridge at all. So, but that's how life is. Sometimes there are seasons when you simply can't get where you thought you were going. There are things you cannot fix, you can't control, or you can't bypass. And sometimes you just have to accept the fact, this is the road I'm on right now. I love the Frederick Buechner quote that says, here's the world. Beautiful and terrible things will happen. Don't be afraid. Because that's life. Beautiful things, terrible things, unexpected things. And yet, don't be afraid. God is still with you on the road. All right, and number 10, stay alert or you might miss the instructions. So this one actually happened to us. We were almost late to a wedding because I was distracted. So let me tell you this story. The main thing that we went up to Indianapolis for this weekend was to go to my cousin's wedding. So we were, hanging out with family on Friday, and Friday night we went to the fair, and Saturday we met up with family for lunch, and then we were all headed to the wedding. Well, we were going to meet at my son's hotel room. And so my daughter and I were going to meet them there and we were going to change clothes and get ready for the wedding at their hotel room. Well, they stopped to run an errand on the way to their hotel. And so we stopped to get some coffee. And then I saw a Meijer. And I was like, well, we got to be pretty close because we were in a little town not too far from the town where the wedding was going to be. So I was figuring, it's probably 15, 20-minute drive to the wedding from where we were at. So we ran in this Meijer and I started looking around at different things. And I was looking at all the different Indiana t-shirts and this and that. And I had a card that I'd gotten for my cousin, but it had gotten ruined in my suitcase. So I was picking out a new card. And finally, my son texted my daughter and he was like, hey, are you guys still coming here to change clothes? And she's like, oh, yeah. And mom's just looking at a couple things. And he's like, are you changing there? Like, why are you over there? And she's like, oh, she's just looking at a couple things. He's like, well, it's like almost a 40-minute drive from here to the wedding. So we were like, oh my goodness. So first we got distracted doing that. So we ran over to their hotel room and we got changed real fast. We got ready real fast. And they jumped in the car ahead of us and they took off. And then we got in the car and we started driving. And it was 35 minutes between there and the wedding. But we were still good, at the end of 35 minutes, I think we would have gotten there at like 15 minutes till or 20 minutes till. And as I was driving, I was picking up, you know how you do. You pick up a minute here, you pick up a minute there. And I was like, oh, this is good because now we'll be like 20 minutes early. And so Laura's putting her makeup on in the car and I'm just chatting it up with her. I'm talking to her about this and talking to her about that. And I'm talking to her about something my other son said. And, about their vacation this summer and this and that. And I'm just driving along, happy-go-lucky down the interstate to this wedding. And all of a sudden, so, the time's ticking down. Now we only have, went from 35 minutes down to 30, down to 25, down to 20. We didn't have very much time left to get to this wedding. So everything was going along exactly as planned. And all of a sudden, I looked up and I just gasped. And I was like, oh my gosh. what happened? It went back up to 30 minutes and I couldn't figure out what happened. And the wedding started at 5 and it said my arrival time was going to be at 4:57. And I just literally freaked out. I was like, Laura, what just happened? She's like, I don't know. I wasn't looking. I was, putting my makeup on and I was just totally distracted. So we were almost late to a wedding because I literally missed the exit while I was just sitting there chatting it up. And, I was distracted. And isn't this one of the biggest dangers in life? We're so busy looking at everything else that we miss the thing that's right in front of us. Distraction can steal your joy, your peace, your focus, your opportunities, and sometimes even your dreams. God may be giving you an instruction, but you're constantly looking everywhere else, and you literally might miss it. So our key thought here is pay attention to the road that you're actually on, not the road that you want to be on, or not the 50 other options that are all around you. Pay attention to the road you are actually on. So my Taken Back Happy friend, maybe you're in a season where you feel like you've missed your exit. Maybe you're wondering if you've taken a wrong turn. Maybe you're frustrated because the road is under construction. Maybe you're tired of hearing everyone tell you to stay in your lane. Or maybe you've been so distracted by everything around you that you've forgotten to pay attention to where God is leading you. But here's the good news. First, you haven't ruined the trip. God can reroute you. There's more than one way to get there. You don't have to navigate alone, and you don't have to know the entire route. You just have to be willing to pay attention to the next direction. And maybe that's the real lesson I learned from driving around in the big city. I don't need to know a whole road. I just need to trust the one who's already been down it. And maybe that's the lesson for you as well. So my Taken Back Happy friends, enjoy the journey, because in every journey there's an adventure, and doing life with God is most certainly an adventure. If this podcast blessed and encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with your friends. You can take a screenshot and share it in your stories, but make sure you tag me at Gina Granville so we can connect. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you join my Taken Back Happy Facebook group. I'll meet you back here soon, and we'll continue taking back happy together.